Chapter 30, To Save a Life or Not. The City of Spokane each year asks for local businesses, nonprofits, warehouses, and others to submit requests to be a warming center during the cold winter months from November 1st through March 1st. These act as emergency shelters for the homeless when the temperature reaches 17 degrees or colder. In 2012, no one applied. We thought about it a lot, but we decided the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. requirement to open wouldn't quite work for us around some of our events. We have minors here each Monday night for the Youth Symphony. There are several times during December alone where we're holding special services or banquets that won't end by 8 p.m. In addition to this, 2 to 4 people need to be ready to spend the night in the church with up to 95 homeless men at short notice. It didn't seem very feasible, so we decided it wouldn't work for us. We didn't put in an application either. Since I had been part of the Spokane Homeless Coalition for a couple of years, I've met many people in different levels of government or who work at nonprofit charities. The city called me. Rob, no one applied this year, and for the first time in a long time, Catholic Charities can't pick up the slack on this one. Would you please help us out? Is there anything we can do to work with your church? Well, I don't know about you, but when the Department of Health and Human Services decides to call a church and ask for help, I say, don't fumble the ball on this one. I went to work doing what I do best, making connections and thinking outside the box. After a flurry of phone calls, I called the city back and proposed an idea. What if we hosted the warming center, but staffed it with Union Gospel Mission staff that could come down at a moment's notice and spend the night in the church? On any given night, when we couldn't host the warming center due to our schedule conflicts, we'd have a second and a third location already predetermined to be the alternate setup. These sites would have to be within walking distance of our church. Central United Methodist Church just got a brand new pastor who was one day on the job when I called. He said, absolutely, when I pitched the idea to him. I liked him right away. Not just because of this, but because he is the main announcer of the local Scottish Highland Games every year, and we're blood connected in some ancestral way, I'm sure. I had a delightful conversation with the more liberal woman who pastors Westminster Congregational Church. She, too, promptly said, let's go for it. I don't know how our board will react, but let's get the discussion moving forward at least. So we planned on partnering with Union Gospel Mission and 2 other churches along with the city to provide emergency shelter to homeless men that winter. It was rather ironic that 3 of the oldest and poorest churches in Spokane were stepping up to help the community in its emergency needs. All 3 of us churches were barely hanging on financially, and each of us were wondering how long we can last into the future under present conditions. Those other 2 are sustained by some money from endowments, and we were borrowing heavily from the equity in the building. However, we were the ones at that moment in history, and we care. We don't care just about our own reputation, but about all the things we think Jesus would do under these circumstances. Would Jesus save a life? You bet. Since it's in our power to follow the steps of Jesus, so will we. The city plan was to reimburse expenses, so we had to make sure that each of the UGM staff was paid for their nights of serving, with usually enough left over to help offset paper product and cleaning costs for each church. I also called our electric and gas utility company, and in a conversation with them, they decided to help us with costs by donating $1,500 to us. No one ever told me how much wheeling and dealing there is to run a downtown broke church. Creating partnerships and thinking outside the box is the only way to survive under these conditions and to get things done. But our church believes that this site belongs to Jesus and should be used in any way possible to do what Jesus would do and to speak what Jesus would say. It's not convenient. It's not simple. It eats up a lot of time that isn't under the classic church umbrella of activity. But Jesus owns our building, and our commitment is to put it to the best possible use under his leadership. We thought Jesus would open the doors to save a life, so that's what we plan to do. In the end, the Westminster Church Board was nervous about housing the crowd, and the United Methodist Church couldn't pass the fire inspection. So it was just us. We found an alternative site for Monday nights when we were occupied by Spokane Youth Symphony, and we waited for the cold to set in. Several nights over that winter, we opened for the homeless men to come in. It's amazing how many guys just won't go to the shelters. Some are kicked out and others just don't feel safe there or don't like mixing with the crowd. We saw an average of 40 men come in every night that the city called to open the warming centers. We never had a single incident or mishap. The biggest problem was that the bureaucratic system was too slow to respond to the need, and several times when the temperature dipped low enough to be open, it was too late in the day to make the call to open, and I wondered where the men slept when it reached 20 degrees. The upshot of it all was that the following spring I got to play a role in helping rewrite the rules and regulations on the city's warming center policies and procedures. Much better planning was the result, and the minimum temperature to open the facilities was raised significantly. I continued to be overwhelmed with the fact that the church just steps in to meet a need. God will open the doors of opportunity that will result in much more compassion and justice for many more people over many more years. It just takes someone willing to start doing something. He will take care of the rest. Think of it. Is there anything your city or county government would ever call you or your church about in a time of crisis asking for your help? Would you fumble the ball if they did? Or would you do whatever it took to have the church make a difference? Who knows what the end results will be? God knows.